After I won a local award, my neighbor sent fake bank statements accusing me of embezzlement. I lost a job offer, and she smirked. Not everyone deserves the spotlight. So I tracked her IP in the PDFs and sent it all to the prosecutor's office. I was standing in the HR office of a marketing firm in downtown Columbus, Ohio, trying to keep my hands from shaking, while the director slid a manila folder across the table toward me. Inside were printed screenshots of bank statements, my name, my address, and a string of fake transfers that made it look like I'd siphoned money from a local nonprofit I volunteered for. "We can't move forward with your employment," the director said, eyes cold, like she'd already decided I was guilty before I even walked in. "An anonymous source sent these to our board and several of our major clients. We have to protect our reputation." I tried to speak. My throat locked up. I felt that weird buzzing numbness that comes with a panic attack, like my body was unplugging from itself. I had spent months interviewing for this job. I had fought for it. I had been told, just last week, that I basically had it in the bag. And now, I couldn't even tell them the documents were fake because the numbers were close enough to look real. Someone had studied me. Someone had planned this. I walked out of that office into the cold November air, clutching the folder like it was a death certificate. That's when my phone buzzed with a notification from one of the award sponsors. A short, sharp email. "We are suspending your recognition pending review of financial concerns brought to our attention." Financial concerns? I hadn't touched a dime of anyone's money. I was the person who stayed late at the nonprofit, sweeping up after events, making sure volunteers had food, driving home people who didn't have rides. But somebody wanted my reputation destroyed. Someone close. It wasn't until I got home to my small duplex in Upper Arlington that I saw her. My neighbor, Lynn, was standing by our shared mailbox, flipping through her envelopes. She looked up with that fake sweet smile she'd always used on me, the kind people reserve for someone they're jealous of but don't want to admit it. "Rough day?" she asked, almost humming the words. I didn't answer. I was too busy replaying the HR meeting in my head. As I opened my mailbox, she leaned closer, too close, and whispered, "Not everyone deserves the spotlight, you know." I froze. The way she said it, low, smug, intentional. The way she lingered, waiting for my reaction. The way she walked off like she'd just delivered a threat wrapped in lace. That was the moment the first sharp, obvious suspicion cut through the fog. Lynn had always acted weird about my award, downplaying it, making little comments about how local awards don't mean much, or some people get attention for doing the bare minimum. I'd ignored it. I thought she was just socially awkward or insecure. But now it felt like she'd slipped her mask. That night, I sat at my kitchen table scrolling through the PDF metadata on the fake bank statements someone emailed to my job. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing. Maybe some anonymous troll. But then I saw it. An embedded IP address. It wasn't mine. And when I plugged it into a lookup tool, the location pinged less than 0.4 miles from my duplex. Practically around the corner. Except not just around the corner, right inside my neighborhood. My pulse hammered. My palms went icy. I dug deeper into the PDFs, into the header information from the anonymous emails, into the cloud account the fake documents had been uploaded to. And when I matched the IP signature with the metadata from another file, something stupid, something she must have forgotten she once emailed me, I felt my stomach drop straight through the floor. The sabotage traced back to one person. My neighbor, Lynn. And when I realized exactly what I could do with that information, who I could submit it to, and how far the fallout could really go, I knew this story wasn't even close to over. Before everything blew up, I honestly thought Lynn was just the kind of neighbor you politely nod to and then forget about 5 minutes later. We weren't friends. We weren't enemies. We just lived side by side in a quiet duplex complex in Upper Arlington, the kind where retirees walk their dogs in the morning and grad students smoke on their porches at night. I moved in 2 years ago, right after my mom passed. I needed somewhere affordable while I picked myself back up, somewhere low pressure while I rebuilt my career in nonprofit fundraising. My life back then was simple. Work, volunteer, sleep. That's it. I didn't go out much. I didn't date. My energy went into the nonprofit and into trying to make myself useful enough that I wouldn't feel the grief so sharply. That nonprofit became my community. I ran small events, handled donor outreach, and worked with a group of volunteers who honestly made me feel like I belonged somewhere for the first time in a long time. When I won that local Community Impact Award, it felt surreal. Like maybe all the late nights and stress and scraping together events with almost no budget had finally meant something. There was a little ceremony at a rented hall in Clintonville, nothing fancy, but a few sponsors came, a local paper ran a small feature, and one of the event donors even pulled me aside to say she might have a job lead for me. It was the job I eventually interviewed for, the one I lost because of the fake bank statements. Back then, though, everything felt like it was turning upward. Even Lynn seemed different, not friendly exactly, but curious. She'd make small comments when I got packages or when I left for events dressed up. Once, when I was taking out trash late at night, she asked, "How does it feel getting your name in the paper?" Not rude, just weird. A little too pointed. I brushed it off. I didn't know then that she'd clipped the article from the paper and kept it. I didn't know she'd talked to other neighbors about how some people get recognition for basic things. I only found those things out later. But there were signs. I just didn't see them. There was the time someone slid an unsigned note under my door saying, "People talk, be careful." I thought it was a warning about crime in the neighborhood or something. Now I think it was Lynn testing me, seeing if I'd react. There was the time my car got keyed lightly, almost invisible unless the sun hit it right. I blamed a stranger in a parking lot. But I remember Lynn watching me that day from her window, face blank. And then there was the night everything changed for her, I think. 3 months before the sabotage, I got home from a volunteer gala and accidentally parked in the spot she claimed was hers, even though the property manager had told all tenants that spots were unassigned. She came outside in slippers, pointing at my car, telling me I needed to respect boundaries. I apologized, moved it, and thought she'd forget about it. But I saw something in her eyes that night, something sharp and bitter, like I had stepped on a trigger she'd been hiding. I didn't know she was going through something privately. I didn't know she had been fired months earlier from her remote administrative job and hadn't told anyone. I didn't know she spent her days online, lurking through neighbors' socials, comparing herself to everyone she thought had more. I didn't know she'd already started keeping tabs on me. The truth is, I never imagined anyone would go as far as creating fake bank statements with my name on them. That takes planning. That takes obsession. But maybe the biggest mistake I made was assuming she wasn't paying attention to me at all. Because in reality, she was watching every step I took. And she had already decided I didn't deserve the life I was building. After I found the IP address, I couldn't sleep. I stayed up until almost 4 a.m., sitting at my kitchen table with 3 empty coffee mugs and the glow of my laptop burning into my eyes. The deeper I dug, the more I realized this wasn't some impulsive act from Lynn. This had layers, steps, planning, and the fallout was spreading faster than I could put out fires. By morning, the nonprofit director emailed me asking for an urgent meeting. She sounded cautious, too cautious, like she didn't trust me anymore. I'd given that place 2 years of my life, and now one anonymous message had them doubting everything. That meeting was humiliating. I sat across from the director, a woman I respected, and explained that someone had fabricated financial records, that I never mishandled a single dollar, that I could prove the documents weren't mine. She nodded along, but her face stayed closed off. "Until we complete a full audit," she said, "we'll need to suspend your access to donor systems." Suspended, me, like I was a liability. By lunchtime, one of the event's sponsors texted, asking if I could clarify certain transactions from last spring. Transactions I'd never even heard of. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. Instead, I just typed back a short, polite answer and then deleted the entire text thread before I threw my phone at a wall. And through all of this, Lynn stayed quiet. Too quiet. For the next 2 days, she didn't leave her house much. I only saw her once. She stepped out to get a package, looked at me, smirked like she knew something I didn't, and then went right back inside. That smirk crawled under my skin. It stayed there. Because around that same time, small things in my life started glitching. My LinkedIn was suddenly flooded with profile views from companies I'd never applied to, like someone was mass sending out my resume without permission. One company even emailed me about my inquiry, attaching a resume that looked like mine, except the skills summary had weirdly arrogant language in it, like someone wanted me to look full of myself. Then my landlord left me a voicemail saying he got an anonymous email complaining about my late-night screaming fights. I live alone. I don't scream at anyone. I barely talk after 10 p.m. Every day it felt like another piece of my life was being nudged just slightly off-center. Not enough to collapse everything at once, just enough to make people question me. That's what made it so terrifying. She wasn't just attacking my job, she was attacking my credibility. Lynn wasn't impulsive, she was methodical. She wanted this slow drip of doubt. She wanted to make me look unstable, unreliable, someone sponsors and employers wouldn't touch. And still, I had no proof I could take to anyone official. Not yet. But then came the moment when everything suddenly tipped. On the third night, I walked outside to take the trash out, and I saw her car trunk open. Not a big deal, except I heard something inside, her phone, loudly playing a video she must have forgotten to pause. It was the news clip from the award ceremony, my award ceremony. My voice talking. I froze. She was watching me. Again. And then, just as I turned to go back inside, I noticed something glinting behind the trash bins. I reached down, thinking it was just a soda can someone dropped. No, it was a crumpled printout of one of the fake bank statements. On the back of it, notes in her handwriting, calculations, edits, draft amounts. My stomach lurched. I looked toward her townhouse. The blinds shifted. She had been standing there watching me find it. This wasn't paranoia anymore. This wasn't maybe. This wasn't coincidence. Lynn was escalating, and something told me she wasn't close to finished. The night after I found the crumpled printout behind the trash bins, I finally decided to confront Lynn, not directly, but by gathering anything I could before she tried covering her tracks. I wasn't stupid enough to go banging on her door, but I needed to see if she'd slip up. People like her always do when they think they're smarter than everyone around them. That opportunity came faster than I expected. Around 11 p.m., as I was taking my dog for a short walk around the block, I saw Lynn leaving her house in a hurry. She was dressed in jeans and a hoodie, hair shoved into a messy bun, carrying her laptop bag like she didn't want anyone to see what was inside. She kept glancing over her shoulder, the way people do when they're up to something. I followed at a distance, down the sidewalk toward the small community library branch 2 blocks away. It had late-night study hours for students. Anyone could slip in unnoticed. I waited 10 minutes, then walked in through the side entrance. Sure enough, Lynn was in one of the back study rooms, her laptop open, papers spread everywhere. My heart was pounding. I kept far enough away to stay invisible, but close enough to see the glow of her screen reflecting on the glass. She wasn't watching videos or reading. She was editing something, PDFs. I took out my phone and snapped a photo of her working, thinking maybe I'd get lucky and capture something obvious. But as I zoomed in, the pit in my stomach widened. On her screen wasn't another fake bank statement. It was an email draft, addressed to the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Office. It accused me, by name, of falsifying nonprofit donation receipts and claimed I had a documented history of financial deceit. She had attached half a dozen doctored files. She wasn't stopping. She was escalating. She wanted a legal investigation. I staggered back behind a shelf before she could see me. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped my phone. I walked straight home without looking back. Once there, I opened my laptop and pulled up the metadata again, now with a clearer head. I searched through everything: the fake statements, the anonymous emails, the document properties. I kept hoping for one solid thread I could pull. And then I found it. Buried in the document history of one of the PDFs, a file she'd probably revised dozens of times, was a username tied to a cloud account. Something like Lynn Admin Backup 93. It wasn't super obvious. It looked like some default device name that got automatically stamped onto the file when she exported it. But that wasn't the twist. The twist was that the file didn't originate this month. It was created 8 months ago, long before the award, long before the job interviews, long before any of the things she claimed I stole the spotlight for. She'd been working on sabotaging me long before I knew I was achieving anything worth sabotaging. I felt everything inside me collapse into a tight, cold knot. This wasn't jealousy over the award. This wasn't about parking spots or small talk or petty neighborhood bitterness. She had been building this, for months, like a long, slow fuse leading to one massive blow-up, but I still didn't understand why. Why me? Why start before I even did anything noteworthy? Why invest this much hate into someone who barely knew she existed? My chest ached as I dug deeper into the archive logs, scrolling past file after file, until I hit the one that made my breath completely stop. Another PDF. Same cloud account. Same device name. Except this one wasn't about me. It was labeled with someone else's name, someone who used to live in my exact same unit before I moved in. A person who had mysteriously moved out after professional issues and rumors, according to a neighbor I barely remembered talking to. Same pattern, same fake documentation, same Lynn. I wasn't her first target. I was simply next. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after discovering she'd done this before. Same pattern, same methods, same quiet destruction. I kept thinking about the person who lived in my unit before me. A graphic design student who left suddenly after what neighbors vaguely called problems at her internship. At the time, I didn't think much of it. People move. Life changes. Now I knew the truth. Lynn didn't snap, she repeated. Once I saw that, something in me shifted. Fear burned off. Shock burned off. What was left was cold, clear anger, steady, controlled, focused. I wasn't going to confront her. I wasn't going to yell at her or tip her off. People like Lynn thrive on chaos, on reactions, on watching other people unravel. Revenge only works when the target never sees it coming, and she wasn't going to see mine from a mile away. So I started building my case. Step 1, secure every piece of evidence. I created 2 separate encrypted drives, one physical, one cloud-based, and uploaded everything. Screenshots, metadata, timestamps, the crumpled printout behind the trash bins, even the photo of her drafting the email to the Attorney General. Every single document got backed up twice, with read-only copies. If she somehow got into my accounts or devices, I wasn't losing a thing. Step 2, start a quiet timeline. I wrote out every strange incident since moving in, every anonymous complaint, the keyed car, the weird note under my door, the sudden resume glitches, the LinkedIn spam, everything. I included dates, descriptions, who told me what. I wasn't going in with a vague feeling. I was going in with a pattern. Step 3, find her weak point. With people like Lynn, there was always one. I dug through public records. I dug through old neighborhood Facebook posts. I dug through archived versions of her deleted LinkedIn profile using cached pages. I didn't hack anything. I didn't need to. People leave trails even when they think they're careful. I learned she'd been fired from her last job for documentation inconsistencies. They never proved it was intentional, so she avoided legal issues, but the company didn't mince words in their termination report. She tried to cover her tracks by claiming it was a misunderstanding, but if someone connected her past behavior with what she was doing now, she'd be finished. Step 4, set a trap. I knew she was watching me, watching my movements. My mailbox, my routines, so I started being predictable in ways that would make her confident I wasn't onto her. I went on my normal walks. I waved politely. I left my blinds half open in the evenings, purposely letting her see me on my laptop, looking stressed and confused. I wanted her to think her plan was working. I wanted her comfortable, sloppy, bold, and she took the bait. 3 days into my act, I woke up to yet another anonymous email sent to my nonprofit's board, this time accusing me of harassing coworkers. The wording was messy, emotional, not as polished as her earlier attempts. That told me something important. She was getting impatient. People like her hate when their victims stop reacting. It makes them reckless. Good. Reckless was exactly what I needed from her. Step 5, prepare the nuclear option. I drafted a packet, everything I planned to submit. Not to the police yet, not to my employer, not to the nonprofit. I was preparing it for someone who would understand the scope of what she'd done. The State Fraud Division. And if my timing worked out, someone else too. Someone she would never expect. Someone who would take her down harder than any government agency. But before I sent any of it, I needed one more thing. One more piece of proof that tied her directly to the files without a doubt. And thanks to her growing carelessness, I knew exactly where I'd find it. I just didn't know then that the final piece of evidence wouldn't just expose her. It would expose something far worse. The last piece of proof I needed wasn't in the metadata. It wasn't in the printed documents or the fake statements or the anonymous emails. It was in her house. I knew it after watching her for a week, her patterns, her habits, the way she clutched that laptop bag like it contained her entire identity. She worked on the files there, she exported them there, and she kept hard copies. The printout I found behind the trash bins proved she wasn't careful with her paper trail. So when she left one Saturday morning with her suitcase, rolling it down the driveway like she was heading out for a weekend trip, I waited. I watched her car pull out onto the main road. I waited another 10 minutes to be sure she wasn't doubling back. Then I walked outside to grab my mail and froze. Her front door wasn't fully shut. It was pulled closed, but the latch hadn't caught. I could see the faint sliver of light from inside. My heart kicked so hard I thought it would bruise my ribs. This was it. The chance. The missing piece. But I wasn't going in. That wasn't the twist. As I got closer, I heard something. A faint mechanical hum. Not her AC, not a fan, a printer, running, printing something. My skin prickled. Someone was inside her house. Except no, her car was gone. And through the side window I could see movement. Shadows, but not a person walking. More like flickering, repeated motion. It hit me. She had set up her printer on a timer or remote trigger. She was printing documents while she wasn't home. Why? I stepped to the edge of her porch and glanced through the thin curtain beside her door. The printer tray was slowly filling with sheets. I couldn't read the text from where I stood, but the formatting was unmistakable. Columns, line items, forged financial statements. She was creating new versions while she was gone, probably to send to a different agency. Or maybe she was preparing backups in case her earlier attempts were questioned. But then something else caught my eye, a blur of red text at the top of one page that didn't look like a bank header. I leaned forward just an inch. Just enough. And when the next page fed through the machine, I saw it clearly for half a second. A resignation letter, but it wasn't hers. It had my name on it. She was forging a resignation letter from me to the nonprofit, claiming I was admitting to financial misconduct and stepping down voluntarily. My mouth went dry. If the nonprofit got that before I could clear my name, they wouldn't question it. They'd accept the resignation, close the matter, and walk away. I'd lose everything. My reputation would be gone permanently. But that still wasn't the twist. The twist was the sound I heard next. A small ding from her laptop, which was open on the kitchen table. An email notification. I couldn't read the message, but I recognized the sender's address from the preview line. It was the previous tenant, the graphic design student Lynn sabotaged before me. They were still talking. Not only talking, they were planning something together. A message flashed at the top of the laptop screen. Did you get the files I sent? Use mine if yours look too similar. Keep the pressure on. She deserves it. Me, there were two of them. Lynn wasn't acting alone, and the person she ruined before me wasn't just a victim. They were helping her destroy me too. I stood there on Lynn's porch, heart slamming, staring at the half-printed fake resignation letter and the email from the former tenant. Two people working together. Two people who had decided, months before I even knew either of their names, that I deserved to be destroyed. But the why still haunted me. Why would a former tenant, someone who didn't even know me, help Lynn frame me? Why would Lynn start engineering fake documents 8 months before I even achieved anything? I didn't understand the scale until the next day, when the twist turned into something far uglier. I got a call from a blocked number around 3:30 p.m. Normally, I'd ignore it, but something inside me told me to pick up. A woman's voice came on the line. Flat, quiet, drained. I heard you're digging into Lynn, she said. You should stop. My stomach dropped. It was the former tenant. I know what she did to you, I said, and I know she's doing it again. Silence. A long one. And then she said something that made the back of my neck go cold. You think she ruined my life? That's what she told you, that I was her victim. She gave a short, humorless laugh. No, I ruined hers. Then she told me everything. The reason Lynn did this, the real reason, wasn't jealousy over my award or my job offer or anything I'd achieved. Those were excuses, convenient triggers. Small sparks she could point to later and say, "See, that's why I did it." But none of that was the truth. The truth was that Lynn had been obsessed, pathologically obsessed, with the idea of controlling the narratives of the people around her. She wanted to shape reputations, decide who was good and who was undeserving. She loved watching people lose things they cared about because she felt powerful being the invisible hand behind it. She had done this before. More than once, not just to the former tenant, not just to me, and the graphic design student she supposedly helped. She wasn't a friend, she was a test run. She didn't sabotage me because she hated me, the woman said, voice shaking slightly. She did it because she liked having someone to shape, someone to break down and rebuild, and I let her. I didn't understand what she was until too late. Then came the worst part, the part that still makes my stomach twist. She picked you before you ever moved in, the woman said. She saw your name on the lease application. She looked you up on social media. She said you reminded her of someone she didn't get to finish. Someone who got away before she could ruin them properly. My lungs stopped working for a second. She said you were a project, a long-term one. She wanted to destroy you slowly, piece by piece. She said watching someone lose everything over time is more satisfying. More satisfying, like she wasn't dealing with real lives, real careers, real people. Like we were characters in her private game. The woman on the phone wasn't helping Lynn out of loyalty. She was helping out of fear. After being isolated, manipulated, and driven out of the city, she still felt bound to Lynn, like someone who had been psychologically cornered for so long they couldn't see another way. "She'll burn your whole life down," the woman whispered. "She'll keep going until you disappear, that's what she does. She wants to erase people, make them doubt themselves until they don't fight back." I didn't respond, I couldn't. I felt hollow, chilled, and furious in a way that felt nothing like anger and everything like clarity. Lynn wasn't jealous. Lynn wasn't petty. Lynn wasn't impulsive. She was calculated, cold, cruel in a way that was deliberate and practiced. Her reason was simple and horrifying. She enjoyed destroying people slowly enough that no one believed them until it was too late. And she had picked me months before I ever knew her name. But she hadn't picked someone passive. She hadn't picked someone who would fold. She picked the wrong person to break. The day I took Lynn down, the sky over Upper Arlington was this pale, washed-out blue, quiet, nothing dramatic. It felt wrong, honestly. I thought the world should look different on the day you flip a monster's whole life upside down. But maybe the sky knew something Lynn didn't. I wasn't scared of her anymore. Everything came together in one morning. I started by sending the full evidence packet, not to one place, but to 3. First was the Ohio State Fraud Division, with every forged document, every timestamp, every email header, and the full timeline of her harassment. I included the photo of her drafting the email blaming me of financial misconduct. I also added the metadata logs showing her cloud account creating similar files for the former tenant. Second was her former employer, the one who fired her for documentation inconsistencies. I didn't accuse her of anything. I simply stated that new evidence might help them close unresolved questions regarding falsified records. Companies love tying up loose ends. They responded in under 2 hours. The third packet, that one hit the hardest. I sent it directly to the nonprofit's board, along with a message explaining that I understood their hesitation, but that the truth needed to be seen clearly. I laid out the full pattern, the previous victim, and the legal escalations Lynn had been preparing behind the scenes. I didn't beg, I didn't defend. I just told the truth and let the evidence speak. And then came the final step, the one I'd been waiting for. The trap. 3 days earlier, I'd set up a filter on an unused email address, one I knew Lynn had found because I accidentally left the tab open while she watched from her window. The filter forwarded any incoming messages automatically to a new inbox. I baited her without saying a single word. Sure enough, that morning, she sent a final forged document, a scanned resignation letter she created while printing in her kitchen. She had no idea I'd been expecting it, and she had no idea that by sending it, she had just directly committed a documented act of fraud that I didn't need metadata to prove. I forwarded that message, unaltered, to all 3 parties with a single line, "This is her." By noon, things started moving fast. The nonprofit director called me first. Her voice was shaking. She apologized. She invited me back in. She said the board was horrified, and wanted to issue a formal statement clearing my name. Then, the State Fraud Division reached out. They requested an in-person interview and copies of everything. Their tone was clinical, but I could hear what they weren't saying out loud. This is serious. And this is bad for her. But the real payoff came at 4:17 p.m. I was sitting on my couch when two unmarked sedans pulled into the parking lot. Plainclothes investigators stepped out and walked straight to Lynn's door. I watched from my window as they knocked. She opened it, confused, wearing the same fleece pullover she always wore when she thought she was untouchable. Then they showed her the documents. She went pale. She tried to talk. They didn't let her. They escorted her to one of the cars while her neighbors watched from their porches. The moment her door clicked shut behind her, I felt this weight lift off my chest, one I didn't realize I'd been carrying that whole year. Within a week, she was charged with creating fraudulent financial records, falsifying documents with intent to harm reputation, and attempted interference with nonprofit operations. Her former employer filed a complaint too, and the former tenant, she came forward once investigators contacted her, finally breaking the cycle Lynn had trapped her in. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just slept, really slept for the first time in months. The nonprofit reinstated me. The marketing firm offered me the job again, but I turned it down. I wanted a clean slate. When Lynn finally moved out, evicted and disgraced, I stood at my mailbox, the same place she whispered that line months ago. "Not everyone deserves the spotlight," I whispered back, quiet enough that only I could hear. "Turns out you didn't either." And then I walked back inside, closed my door, and let my life begin again.